In Albany, United States, at a local church, a young priest named Judd loses his temper with a deacon and ends up punching him. Afterward, he is brought before a disciplinary council. One of the members, Father Delancey, asks Judd if he's a fighter. Judd admits that he used to be a boxer. He then tells him that the church needs fighters, men willing to fight the world, not each other. He goes on to say that priests are shepherds and the world is full of wolves, but Judd shakes his head and replies, "You start fighting wolves, and before you know it, everyone you don't understand is a wolf." He argues that Christ came to heal the world, not fight it, and concludes by saying he simply wants to be a good priest. Later, Judd apologizes to Bishop Langstrom, who has often stuck his neck out for him. Langstrom calmly reassures him that no one is upset about him hitting the deacon. In fact, quite the opposite. Still, he says the council decided to send Judd to a small church in Chimney Rock called Our Lady of Perpetual Fortitude, currently led by Monsignor Jefferson Wicks. He adds that Wicks is the only priest serving there. Langstrom tells Judd that Wicks is an asshole, which is why very few people go there to pray. He points out that the church could use exactly the spirit Judd showed earlier. Judd is thrilled. A few days later, Judd arrives at the church in Chimney Rock. He opens the door, looks around, and immediately notices that the cross is missing. He turns at the sound of the door opening behind him. It's Monsignor Wicks. After the introductions, Wicks introduces his assistant, Martha. Then Wicks asks Judd to hear his confession, and he agrees. Wicks begins by admitting it has been 6 weeks since his last confession. He confesses that he has envied the material wealth of others, including a luxurious sports car he saw in a commercial. He also admits envying the authority his grandfather had as a priest. Lastly, he confesses that he has masturbated 30 times in various places, including after a dream he had about a Japanese cafe where the cats were actually girls. Not knowing what to do afterward, Wicks says he finished onto a copy of the Catholic Chronicle. Judd quietly chants, 5 Hail Marys and 1 Glory Be. Over the next few weeks, Judd settles into the church. He becomes familiar with Sam, the groundskeeper, who is married to Martha. One day, Sam confesses that Wicks helped him quit drinking. He says Wicks used to drink too, and once told him, "If I can beat that demon, you can too." Judd also starts helping Martha with the church paperwork. Then one day, Judd discovers that the crypt outside the church has been covered with crude drawings. When he asks Sam if the crypt has an entrance, Sam nods and explains that it's a Lazarus door, a heavy door that needs construction equipment to open from the outside, but from the inside a single push could send it crashing down. Judd asks who's buried there. Martha answers, Prentice, Wicks's grandfather and the church's founder. She says Prentice was like a father to her, and it makes her sick to see children draw rocket ships all over his resting place. Later, as Judd prepares to hang a cross on the wall, Wicks interrupts him. He tells Judd to leave the wall as it is, calling it a reminder of the shameful sin of the harlot whore. Judd eventually learns that the woman Wicks called a harlot whore was actually his mother Grace. Martha explains that Prentice entered the priesthood after he was widowed, and he founded this church while raising his daughter, Grace. Martha bitterly says that Grace liked to dress provocatively, and one day she became pregnant by a drifter. To protect his grandson, Wicks, Prentice promised to leave his entire fortune to Grace after his death, but only if she stayed under his roof. Martha recalls that Prentice told her when she was young that wealth, and the power that comes with it, is like Eve's apple, and that one must guard their loved ones from its corruption. Not long after, Martha witnessed Prentice die shortly after taking his final communion. After his death, Grace went to Prentice's attorney to claim the inheritance, but the lawyer told her there wasn't a single penny left. Rumors spread. Some said Prentice threw the money into the water. Others believed he had donated it. Martha reveals that all Prentice left for Grace was a wooden box containing a small figurine of Jesus. Enraged, Grace desecrated the entire church. Martha says she whispered in Grace's ear that God would forgive her. Grace later died of a brain aneurysm after throwing herself against Prentice's tomb. Judd mutters, "Holy shit," then quickly apologizes. Judd realizes just how dark the church's history truly is, and he feels that weight in the air. What he can't understand is why people would choose this place as their spiritual home. Over the next 9 months, Judd begins to learn about the royal flock of Wicks. Vera Draven is a local attorney. One day, she tells Judd that her late father used to be Wicks's lawyer and his drinking buddy. Vera admits she is not interested in running the law firm, but she keeps it going because she knows her father would have wanted it that way. Just then, her adopted son, Cy, arrives home. Cy once dreamed of becoming a politician but failed, so he started a YouTube channel instead. Judd comments that it must be nice having Cy back home. Vera then reveals that when she was younger, her father came home one day with 10-year-old Cy and simply told her to raise him. But word spread quickly, and people assumed Cy must be Vera's brother. Vera sighs, saying she only hopes her father is proud of her. Later, Cy confides to Judd that he almost became a golden GOP, but he couldn't connect with voters. He says he tried promising people all the trending issues, the gender thing, the trans thing, the border thing, the homeless thing, but none of it worked. Judd also gets to know Nat Sharp, the town doctor, and his wife, Darla. Nat adores her, but a week ago she left him for a wealthier man. Judd could see that Nat would do anything to get her back. Then Judd meets Lee, a local celebrity known for his sci-fi novels. He tells Judd that Wicks and the church changed his life. However, when his book sales start to decline, Lee decides to write a new one based on Wicks's teachings and his own reflections on them, hoping it will bring him back into the spotlight. And finally, Judd meets the newest member of the church, Simone. She had been a world-class cellist until health issues forced her to retire 5 years ago. Simone tells Judd she thought doctors could heal her, but they couldn't. So now she places her hope in the church and in Monsignor Wicks, believing a miracle may still be possible. Judd also notices that Wicks keeps his core group tight. And every week during Mass, instead of preaching forgiveness, Wicks singles out a person, usually a newcomer, and publicly shames them. On this particular day, his target is a single mother. He accuses her of having a child out of wedlock to satisfy her selfish heart, claiming she deprived that child of a father. He tells her his own mother was like her and that he cursed her selfish heart every day of his life. The woman walks out. Judd realizes what Wicks is doing is deeply wrong, but no one dared to question him. So Judd decides to gather the group for a prayer focused on forgiveness and on God, Jesus Christ. Judd shares a personal story. When he was 17, he was a boxer, and he killed a man in the ring. After that, Judd says, he built walls of anger, addiction, and violence around himself. But the day he finally confessed his sins to Christ, he saved him, not by transforming him completely, but by sustaining him. Judd says that this is what he wants this church to be. Martha interrupts him and asks when Monsignor Wicks is arriving. Judd, startled, explains that he only wanted the group to connect and pray together. Realizing Wicks wasn't invited, the group hesitates. Martha texts Wicks, then announces that he's upset and replied, "What the holy heck?" Judd urges them to stay, but they tell him they thought this was an official prayer meeting, and they leave. Martha gives Judd a dry apology, saying his little coup didn't work. Judd is stunned. Martha adds that if anyone wants to pray or confess anything, they can do it with Monsignor Wicks. But Judd doesn't believe her. He tells her they're all afraid of Wicks. He challenges her directly, asking if she could confess her deepest, darkest sins to Wicks without fear. Martha simply replies, "I will." And she does exactly that. 9 months pass. Wicks sits down for yet another confession with Judd, by admitting, yet again, that he has masturbated. Then he asks Judd how he's doing. This time, Judd asks Wicks to take his confession. Judd begins by admitting he betrayed Wicks's trust as he looked at his medical records. He discovered that Wicks had a radical prostatectomy 5 years ago, making it clear that Wicks's repeated confessions of masturbation were a manipulation, a way to play Judd. Judd says openly that he doesn't like how Wicks tends his flock. Wicks looks confused. So Judd points out to him that instead of helping Nat forgive and move forward, using Christ as a way to rebuild his life, Wicks is making Nat angrier and more resentful toward his ex-wife and women in general. He talks about Lee, who has become paranoid, convinced the world is out to get him. And Simone, Judd adds, is simply being used because Wicks takes her money and keeps her funding the church with false promises of a miracle. Judd says he believes miracles can happen, but what Wicks is offering is transactional. Finally, Judd speaks about Cy. He says Sy clips Wicks's sermons and uses them in his political rants, misrepresenting the church in dangerous ways. Judd also points out that new people have stopped coming, and the only ones left are hardened regulars whom Wicks keeps angry and afraid for some reason. Wicks punches him. He tells Judd that it's good to be angry, that anger means he isn't helpless. He talks about how the world wants to destroy them and adds that Judd's version of love and forgiveness are garbage. Judd quietly replies that Wicks is poisoning the church, and that he will do everything in his power to cut him out like a cancer. He doesn't realize that Sy is recording their entire conversation. Days later, Judd overhears Wicks holding a private meeting without him. When Wicks spots him, he shouts for Judd to leave, accusing him of questioning his authority. Shaken, Judd heads to a bar. He accidentally breaks a devil figurine on a lamp and apologizes to the owner, Nikolai, who tells him it's fine. An hour later, Judd returns to the church. In a moment of anger, he throws the wolf figurine through one of the church windows. It shatters, and he quickly leaves. Later, during the Good Friday service at 3 p.m., held with just the usual regulars, Judd feels something different in the air. He notices Wicks taking a break in a small room off the side of the stage, so Judd steps in to lead the service as he normally does. Suddenly, everyone hears a heavy metallic clunk and the sound of a body hitting the floor. Judd is the first to approach the room. Seconds later, others follow close behind. Horrified, he realizes Wicks is dead, likely stabbed. Nat tells him not to touch anything, and Judd backs away, and Nat takes his place. Martha suddenly screams that it's the devil, and Nat pulls a knife with a devil-shaped handle from Wicks's body. The ambulance arrives 5 minutes later, Judd comes out of the church and the police follow soon after, led by the local chief, Geraldine. The police question Judd throughout Saturday. Geraldine points out to Judd that he was the only one on stage at the time of the killing, and the only one who hated Wicks's guts. Judd denies hating him. Then Geraldine warns him to be careful because Sy has posted a video of him and Wicks at the church, the moment where Judd said he would cut him out like a cancer. Judd checks his phone and sees dozens of messages calling him the killer priest. But he doesn't care about being called that. What pains him is the realization that Wicks has won, corrupting Judd's heart. He can't help but rejoice at Wicks's death. Judd silently begs Christ to help him find a way out of this darkness. The church door opens, and a man steps inside asking if the church is open. Judd nods and welcomes him. The man looks around, and Judd, trying to break the ice, says it's hard not to feel God's presence in the sanctuary. The man replies that he's an atheist. The only altar he kneels at is rationality. He mentions that his mother was religious. Judd asks him how it feels to be here. The man answers honestly. The architecture is mysterious, impressive even. But the place feels built on the empty promise of a child's fairy tale, one filled with malevolence, misogyny, and homophobia, all while covering up its own shameful acts. Judd is impressed by the man's honesty and says as much. Then he breaks down. The man asks if he's all right. Judd, in tears, tells him that just when he thought he had finally become the priest he wanted to be, he now fears he's about to lose everything, even his purpose. Geraldine steps into the church and addresses the stranger as Detective Blanc. Blanc tells Judd he's here to investigate Wicks's death. Judd, stunned, asks if he's with the police. Blanc shakes his head and says he works in a private capacity. Judd tells him he didn't kill Wicks, though he admits that in his heart it feels like maybe he did. Blanc studies Judd, his torn pants, cracked lips, exhausted eyes, and says he sees a tormented man drowning in guilt, not a murderer. He offers to help clear Judd's name if he helps him with the investigation. Judd agrees. Their first stop is to inspect the body. To put Judd at ease, Blanc tells him to picture Wicks as nothing more than an empty vessel, a man dead from a knife wound. Blanc follows Judd outside and tells him that if he wants to be a priest again, he needs to hold himself together. Blanc reminds him that a real killer is still out there, and they need to find him. Geraldine joins them, reminding Judd that he's free to go as he hasn't been formally charged. But Judd refuses. He wants to catch the killer and clear his name. Blanc smiles. Their next stop, uncovering the origin of the murder weapon. They head to the bar. Nikolai examines the devil figurine and says his wife picked that decoration for the bar. Nikolai shows them an old photo of the figurine attached to the lamp before Judd had broken it. Nikolai points out that back then it wasn't painted. Geraldine nods and says that after painting it, the murderer must have embedded the blade into it. Blanc asks Judd where he threw the figurine. At the window, Judd says. He adds that after Christmas Mass, Martha mentioned finding a broken window and nothing more. Judd and Geraldine approaches Blanc. He asks if they see what he sees. Judd nods and retrieves a bag that belongs to Nat. Nat staggers over, drunk, asking Judd whether he used this knife to kill Wicks. Judd denies it. Lastly, the trio heads to the church, the crime scene. Before entering, Blanc tells Geraldine that this case has all the markings of a classic, impossible crime. Geraldine asks if it's solvable. Blanc smugly replies that there isn't a crime he can't solve. He then tells them about a book called The Hollow Man, a basic guide to the locked door mystery and impossible crime. Something clicks in Judd's mind. He shows them the group's book club reading list. Blanc realizes the books are essentially a guide for committing a perfect murder. He asks Judd who picked them. Judd replies, Oprah, and explains that Martha pulls a theme list from their website. Then Blanc considers how the murder might have happened. First, he suggests Wicks was stabbed before entering the room, but Judd says he didn't see anything to support that. Blanc says the next possibility is that something hidden in the wall propelled the knife forward. Geraldine scoffs and says, so something was placed ahead of time and triggered remotely? Blanc nods and replies that a strong RV signal can penetrate walls. Judd recalls that Wicks was standing at the back of the room, facing the door, and fell onto his stomach as he remembers hearing a cling sound. So the knife would have had to come from the back wall. Blanc asks Geraldine whether anything was found on the floor at the scene. She says yes. 2 pieces of red thread near the body, right by the hip. Suddenly, Martha bursts into the church, crying. She begs Judd to make the police leave, accusing them of disrespecting the sacred space by treating it like a crime scene. Then she turns on Judd, blaming him for staining the church and calling him a false priest. Judd snaps, but quickly apologizes. He vows he will help the police find the truth, even if it puts him at odds with her and the rest of the group. Later, he releases his frustration on a punching bag at Sam's place. As he hits it, a fog suddenly lifts when he notices the TV Sam is watching. Judd asks if Sam recorded the match on Friday. Sam nods. Judd brings the tape to Detective Blanc. With help from an officer, they track that Nat made a phone call to the hospital at 3:47 p.m. And 90 seconds before that, the officer rewinds the game footage and points out a glitch. The officer says the interference could have come from anything, but it fits Blanc's theory. A burst of signal from a modified remote control. Judd's face lights up, until he notices Blanc's expression. Blanc asks the officer to run the church's security footage side by side with the game broadcast. They discover that Wicks was already dead before the RF interference. Judd's hope collapses, but Blanc tells him it isn't pointless. They now have all the pieces: the figurine's origin, the red threads, the RF burst. And yet Blanc admits he still can't solve it. Later, Blanc offers Judd a ride home. Just as Judd opens the door to leave, Blanc stops him and says, "Something's missing, a piece of the story." Then Blanc asks Judd to write, in his own words, everything that happened from the moment Judd entered the church to Wicks's death. Judd spends an hour writing it all down. Blanc reads it carefully. Then he looks up and asks Judd, "You came outside the church minutes later, just before the police arrived?" Defeated, Judd admits he wanted to protect Wicks's reputation for Sam's sake because he believed in him. So he hid the flask and later retrieved it. Blanc is furious since Judd has essentially let the killer walk away. Judd takes Blanc to show him the flask he hid, but it's gone. Judd insists he thought the flask had nothing to do with the murder. Blanc sighs and says they'll have to use tomorrow's burial gathering to question the group. The next day, the crypt is opened so Wicks's body can be transferred inside. Martha requests a final look at him before they close the tomb. When the service ends, Judd confronts the group, saying he and Blanc need to question everyone to find Wicks's killer. Martha stiffly tells him he's no longer welcome here. Blanc cuts in and asks the group what happened on Palm Sunday, the day Judd walked in on their private meeting. Cy offers to explain, but the others shout him down. Unbothered, Cy reveals that he recorded the whole thing. Judd shuts the office door and Blanc plays the video. In the recording, Vera confronts Wicks. She says she'd been thinking about his mother, Grace, the harlot whore, and how she must have felt when Wicks and Prentice closed ranks on her and shamed her. Vera then reveals why she called the meeting. She got a call from a family law colleague in Brooklyn who needed to verify contact information from Monsignor Wicks, since Vera is his attorney. The colleague mentioned an acknowledgement of paternity form. Vera then discovered that Cy is Wicks's son. Vera tells the group bitterly that the men in her life closed ranks on her too, forcing her to raise a child alone while Wicks lived freely. Nat asks Cy if he knew. Cy shakes his head and says he didn't. Not until Vera told him. Wicks then openly admits that Cy is his son from a woman not important. Wicks says that now everyone will see Cy as his son, and he's happy about that. The group is horrified at first, then slowly, disturbingly, they begin to justify Wicks's behavior, shifting blame onto Cy's mother. Then Wicks announces that he plans to close this sad little church the coming Sunday, and not before destroying every one of them. He starts with Nat, telling him he'll report his drinking to the medical board, which would revoke his license. Then he turns to Lee, whose book, based on Wicks's teachings, is, in Wicks's words, an affront to his ministry. He vows to publicly discredit him and warn publishers. He tells Vera her father would be ashamed of her. And finally, he tells Simone that he cannot heal a faithless woman and that she will die imprisoned in her own chair. Lee asks Wicks if this has to do with Judd's secret prayer meeting. That sets Wicks off. He screams that it's his church and Judd has no right to question his authority. Judd enters at that moment, and Wicks hurls a book at him. When the recording ends, Judd turns to Cy and asks why Wicks was suddenly willing to expose his own flock. Cy admits, "I told him to." He explains that after Vera revealed the truth, he confronted Wicks, who embraced him as his son. Wicks then told Cy that he hated this church and the sad little flock he had gathered, and that now, with Cy in his life, he could finally leave it all behind. Wicks also told him that he recently discovered his grandfather's long-lost fortune. Cy continues saying how he encouraged Wicks to go into politics. His charisma and cult-like hold over people would win over voters, especially with a large sum of money behind him. And he admits that he told Wicks they needed to burn the flock, because if they got rich together, the group would come begging for favors. Cy reveals he doesn't know where the $80 million supposedly is. He believes Wicks must have left the bank information hidden somewhere. Cy even shows Blanc the notes he made from Wicks's final sermon, focusing on the phrase, "Eve's apple must be restored to the tree." He mentions that he tried to convert the words into numbers, but they didn't match the 12 digits of a bank account. Cy then asks Vera if Wicks ever told her anything. She coldly replies that even if he had, she wouldn't tell him. Cy mocks her, saying she's jealous that he's the one inheriting the money, but Vera simply orders him to collect his things from her house and leave. Cy asks Blanc and Judd if they know anything about Eve's apple. They both say no, but promise to tell him if they ever learn more. Cy leaves. Blanc and Judd investigate the wooden box, but find nothing. As Judd pulls out Wicks's burial paperwork to file it, he notices something strange. The crypt opening was ordered last Wednesday, 2 days before Wicks died. Blanc tells him that someone knew for sure that Wicks was going to die. To find out who, they call the construction company responsible for opening the crypt. An employee named Louise answers. Judd introduces himself and asks her who placed the crypt opening order. Louise says her brother handles those requests and isn't there at the moment. She promises to call back with the information. Before ending the call, she suddenly asks Judd to pray for her mother, who has a brain tumor. Judd apologizes and listens sympathetically as she talks through tears. Night falls. Blanc leaves the office and finds Judd still on the phone with Louise. At that moment, Martha walks in and announces she is closing the church. Judd helps her. Blanc hurries after him, but Judd tells him he won't help with the investigation anymore as he has priest duties. Blanc argues they're close to solving the case, but Judd refuses. He explains he became a priest after killing a man in the boxing ring, yet God still loves him. Now, Judd says, even if these people committed murder, he wants to love them just like Jesus loves him. He says pursuing the killer for his own satisfaction would make him no better than Wicks. making everything about himself instead of Jesus. Sirens blare outside. Blanc tells Judd he'll handle it. Chief Geraldine enters the church. She tells Blanc that she read The Hollow Man and points out another possibility he failed to mention, which prompts her to rewatch the footage herself. That's when she noticed Judd had 9 seconds alone with Wicks's body before the others entered. More than enough time to kill him. Blanc concedes Judd could have done it, but insists he still doesn't have the full picture. Geraldine doesn't care. She says she's going to arrest Judd. Meanwhile, Judd heads toward the rectory, only to see the crypt door slam open. Emerging from it is Monsignor Wicks, very much alive, and another shadowy figure beside him. Judd darts forward but slips, losing his balance. When he regains his footing, he's struck unconscious. He wakes moments later. Wicks is standing over him. In a flash of anger, Judd lunges. Moments later, Judd finds himself on the ground, with a knife sticking out of Wicks's chest. Judd hears Blanc's voice calling out behind him and panics, fleeing the scene. Curious, Geraldine asks Blanc who the man was. "Sam," Blanc replies, "the groundskeeper." Then Blanc and Geraldine enter the crypt. Wicks's coffin is shattered, and his body is gone. Blanc checks the next coffin, Prentice's, while outside Martha starts chanting, "Praise the Lord." An officer approaches Geraldine and tells her they discovered a hidden camera inside the motion sensor lights. She orders it secured and tells another officer to tape off the area, saying, "The groundskeeper is dead." Martha's face falls. She bolts into the bushes and finds Sam's body, sobbing as she blames Judd for everything. Meanwhile, Judd runs far from the church. His phone rings. It's Louise. She tells Judd that Wicks was the one who ordered the crypt to be opened. Back at the church, Martha informs the group that Wicks has risen again. An hour later, the group gathers outside the church. At the station, Blanc calls Judd repeatedly, but he doesn't answer. Blanc retreats to the media lab and sees the hidden camera footage. Wicks comes out of the crypt and meets another person. 4 seconds later, the next clip shows Judd entering the bushes. Another officer rushes in and says the fingerprint test on the gardening tool used to kill Sam came back. It belongs to Judd. Blanc heads downstairs, mind spinning, when Judd suddenly walks into the station, ready to turn himself in. Blanc immediately ushers him out and into his car. "We need to get to Dr. Nat's house," Blanc tells him. At Nat's place, the house is wrecked. They head to the basement. A chemical odor fills the air. There, they find Wicks's real body, his hands dissolved in a tub of acid. Blanc drains the acid, revealing a second skeleton inside. Judd recognizes the second skeleton as Nat by his wedding ring. Blanc shines his flashlight around. Nat's bag lies nearby. Inside, he finds a bottle of pentobarbital tablets, a powerful sedative that can be lethal in high doses. Blanc calls Geraldine and tells her to come immediately as he and Judd found the bodies. Judd moves toward the door. Blanc tries to stop him, but Judd insists he killed Wicks and is going to surrender. Judd returns to the church, where the entire group is standing outside. He tells them to come in as he's ready to confess. Geraldine enters to arrest him. Judd accepts it and begins to confess to murdering Wicks, but Blanc interrupts him. Blanc tells the room that Wicks was not killed the way they think. He explains. In the room, Wicks drank from his flask, which had been spiked with a drug. When the flask dropped, the metallic clang everyone heard was it hitting the floor. The killer entered, delivered the fatal stab. Geraldine immediately accuses Judd, but Blanc shakes his head. He reveals he noticed something in a photograph. The second lamp was also missing its devil head figurine. 2 devils were missing in total, both painted red to match Good Friday vestments. Blanc explains the trick. One devil head had a knife embedded, and the other was sewn into Wicks's vest with a blood-filled squib, later triggered remotely by Nat, explaining the signal interference. When the squib activated, blood burst through Wicks's clothes, making it appear he'd been stabbed. Blanc continues. After the group discovered Wicks's body, Nat took charge. During the distraction, Nat swapped the sewn devil head for the one containing the knife, planting the murder weapon. He searched for Wicks's flask, but couldn't find it. Then Judd, in a misguided moment of mercy, hid it to protect Wicks's image. But who killed Nat? Geraldine asks. Blanc shakes his head and says He cannot solve the case. Everyone stares at him, stunned. Geraldine orders the group to leave the church. When they're gone, she turns to Blanc, furious. "What game are you playing?" "No game," Blanc says quietly. "Just a revelation. Not from God, but from Father Judd." He explains that Judd showed him something he'd forgotten. Grace, even for the enemy who needs it most. Martha looks at Blanc and quietly says, "You already knew the truth." Blanc nods and explains that he stayed silent so she could reveal it on her own. Blanc then gestures for Judd to take his place as Martha's priest. She begins her confession. Martha explains that, during Prentice's last communion, he showed her a diamond known as Eve's apple. A cursed fortune, he said. To keep anyone from being corrupted by it, he swallowed it. But somehow, Martha says, Grace discovered that Prentice had purchased a diamond. Blanc adds that Grace, being familiar with luxury brands, recognized the custom Fabergé-style wooden box Prentice had left for her. Judd realizes that Grace didn't destroy the church out of spite. She destroyed it so she could search for the diamond. Feeling pity for her, Judd asks what Martha said to Grace. Martha admits that she told her, "I know where he hid it, and I will never tell you, you harlot whore." Martha continues. She had kept the diamond secret for 60 years, until Judd challenged her to confess to Wicks. But Wicks, she realized, was the wrong priest. After their meeting, and after he declared his intention to close the church, she became suspicious. She called the construction company and discovered that Wicks had ordered the crypt opened. She could not allow Wicks to destroy the church. She felt she would be betraying Prentice. So Martha decided she had to retrieve the diamond first, and then get rid of it forever. She enlisted the help of a desperate man, Dr. Nat. Through him, she obtained the pills, which she secretly mixed into Wicks's flask. She had arranged for Sam to take Wicks's place. Blanc notes that the coffin was made by Sam, which explains how he got out later. Martha continues that everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Every moment captured by the hidden camera, just as they intended. The plan was simple. Nat would destroy Wicks's body, and together they would convince the world that Wicks had miraculously risen. But Nat's greed for money ruined everything. Martha then visited Nat's home afterward. He gave her the diamond, which she pretended to drop, then swapped their coffees. Nat revealed that he had killed Sam and that Martha would be next, but he didn't realize he was drinking poisoned coffee. She then arranged both bodies in the basement. Martha collapses. Blanc tells Judd he noticed earlier that her lips were turning blue. She had taken the remaining pills. With fading breath, Martha apologizes to Judd for treating him poorly and to Sam and Nat. Judd gently tells her that she must also apologize to Grace. Martha hesitates, then asks for Grace's forgiveness. Judd absolves her, and Martha dies. Her hand opens and the diamond rolls out onto the floor. Blanc looks at Judd and quietly says, "I didn't see anything." 1 year later. Judd has taken over the church and the group never returned. Lee publishes his book, but he quickly grows resentful of his audience, a fan base made up mostly of older men. Vera shuts down her father's law firm. Simone begins playing cello again, and Cy still won't believe that Judd doesn't know where the diamond is. Judd continues to deny knowing anything. Later, as he builds a new cross for the church and inside, hidden from all eyes, lies the diamond.